Hi, dear ones. So I am just hopping on real quick. I think the best moments with my relationship with this YouTube thing is when I get so eager to make a video that I like put other things that make more sense to the side, and it feels like that like actual like follow your joy thing, which is what I am here to talk about. So I am going to put a link in the description for a brilliant conversation between Tim Ferriss, who you may know from the 4 Hour Work Week, which if you haven't read it, read it. If you read it a while ago, like reread it. It now is reminding me like I want to reread it. And I feel like I thought I ordered it at one point, but I'm not seeing it in my like I keep like a top books bookshelf and I'm not seeing it. So I need to reorder that and remind myself of it. But it is a brilliant mindset shift in terms of work. Ooh, sorry, almost choked a little bit. Conversation between Tim Ferriss on his podcast and Martha Beck, who Martha Beck is the person who runs the life coach training that I went through. And she is one of my favorite authors. You know, as with anyone, like we all have strengths and weaknesses, and I don't agree 100% with either of them, but I think both of them have some really good perspectives. And one of the main themes of this conversation, which is a long conversation, but I really, it's worth listening to because one of the main, very simple ideas that is shared is that we can follow um, as a way of finding meaning or purpose in our life, we can follow the track because they also talk a lot about this tracker, Boyd, who's very cool. And I haven't read his book, but I've listened to some of his stuff. He's a good friend of both of theirs. Anyways, we can follow the track of joy in our life to lead us towards like a life worth living, which is my greatest interest in this lifetime is what makes life meaningful for people, right? And side note, the my number one book recommendation, if you're going to only read one book and I could only give you one book to a library or only have one book on an island, is Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. Because again, this is the thing that excites me more than anything else in this lifetime is understanding what what is it that makes someone want to wake up in the morning that's not just like fear and drudgery, drag yourself through life. Like, what is it that makes life meaningful for people? Because I feel like, at least for me, especially coming from a person who was suicidal for several decades, like I've got to have some meaning because otherwise I just would rather not be here. So for me, this is my most fascinating topic is how do you find meaning? And in this conversation, they really boil it down to joy. And joy sometimes can be hard to find, especially for those of us who have been trained to not pursue our own joy, right? We've been trained to like please other people or be productive or earn money or get good grades or make our parents happy or get a partner or whatever, like our joy, and we're not trained to follow our joy. And for many of us, we're so off track, they call it in the conversation, the path of not here, that we're like, we have no idea like what joy even looks like, how to find it. And what I loved is that Martha in this conversation gives the counterpoint of suffering. Like, how do you know how to find joy? It's suffering, right? We all know suffering. Every single human, you can talk to them like, tell me about your suffering. They'll talk for the next 12 years. Tell me about your joy. Maybe not. But what's really cool is we can use suffering as the indicator of, okay, it's not here. And what that gives us the opportunity to do is not necessarily to like immediately be able to find joy, but to be able to say, all right, let me try something a little bit different, right? If we know that this thing is causing suffering, we can try something a little bit different. And a challenge that I started a few years ago as a result of another teaching I heard from Martha Beck was about trying to um, try a bunch of different things until you could find joy. And she describes in this podcast that what she did with this one client was that she just sat them in a living room and told them they could do nothing but eat ice cream and watch like funny shows. And so she was trying to give them sort of like stimulate joy. Okay. And the way I did it was I required myself to take 10 minutes a day and try to experience joy or pleasure. And I had no idea where to start because I couldn't identify what was like pleasureful for me at that time. So I started with reading fiction because I knew that as a younger child, I loved fiction. I loved reading stories. So I got some fiction from the library. And because I wasn't willing to spend any money on myself, I was like such a self-sacrificer. And like deprive myself was like something I had decided was honorable. So I wasn't willing to spend any money on myself, but I got books from the library and I forced myself to read the books for 10 minutes a day. Now, at the beginning, it was like torture, okay? Because there was so much programming within me that was like, this is not safe to enjoy yourself. But over time, I found a little spark of like, I'm loving this, okay? So I slowly, it took, I was like having panic attacks at first. It was pretty bad, but I had committed to it. So I was going to do it for 30 days. So I kept doing it. And slowly, I started finding myself taking little pockets of time and like, say my kid was brushing his teeth and I'm like standing there making sure he finished brushing his teeth. I would like grab my book and like read 2 or 3 pages in the hallway. And I saw myself starting to like start to grab more reading time. Okay. So I wanted more than the 10 minutes. Then I got in my head that I was going to start painting again. And I hadn't painted for like 20 years at that point, but I was into painting when I was little. So I, again, didn't want to spend any money. I got some like packing paper from Walmart and like $1 paints and $1 paintbrushes. I had decided I would not spend any more than $5. Okay. But the packing paper came with like, like 100 sheets of packing paper. So I painted 100 paintings in like a week, giant, like, you know, big packing paper size. And I even started taping together 4 pieces of packing paper. So it was like as big as a wall. And I spread it out on the ground and taped it and would paint these giant paintings. And it was like so much energy coming out. I painted hundreds of paintings. And then I sort of didn't want to make paintings anymore. And then I started sewing and I was like, I really like this sewing in a straight line. I wasn't sewing anything fancy and I wasn't painting anything fancy. It was like the energy was flowing. I had found joy and connected with it. So then I started this YouTube channel about the sewing projects. And I would wake up in the middle of the night with these sewing project ideas. And I was still working my public school job all day, right? But I would burst out of bed in the morning with these sewing project ideas and like quick make a video about the sewing before I got my kid ready and went off to work. So this gave me this taste of it. And I have now it's morphed into all sorts of things. Now long story short is that now I get to work doing something that brings me great joy. And so I spend all day with these fascinating people sharing about our lives and this journey and what gives it meaning and making these YouTube videos and making my podcast. And I'm just learning about Substack and I'm going to start a writing project because I really love writing. And I've been doing like this calligraphy thing. And I have cooking projects and I take these gorgeous walks every day that I've shared with you. And like I'm still working on the buying things, but I buy things like I love boba and I love mochi and Trader Joe's has this like boba mochi recently. So like I let myself buy like that nice thing or like make myself a beautiful cup of tea or um you know so there's like joy sprinkled all around me now. And I have a keyboard that I'm learning how to play some simple songs and I'm not serious about any of it because it's for joy, right? It is not for serious. It's not for monetization. It's not for getting somewhere. It's for joy. And the way they talk about it in this conversation is that you can ask yourself as a guidance system, and this is exactly ties in with the nervous system, is you can ask yourself, is this point more towards joy or does it point more towards suffering? And before you can ask yourself that question, you need to familiarize yourself with what joy feels like in your body, right? And so you can start to learn how to ask, like, does this feel more like joy, or does this feel more like suffering? And you can use that for the smallest to the littlest. And what this brings in, which is something I'm very excited about right now, is understanding pendulums, which is a concept from reality transurfing. And pendulums are basically rules. So, like, there's a rule like you should, um, what's a rule? You should, you know, wear two of the same shoes. You shouldn't wear like two different mismatched shoes. You should wash your hair once in a while. You should sleep when it's dark out. These are all pendulums. They're not real. There's if you sleep when it's light out, you don't get struck by lightning. If you wear two different shoes, you don't get struck by lightning. They're not universal laws. They're made up pendulums, which keeps a group of people like following a set of things so they're more easily controllable, basically. So if we can start to incorporate this idea of, does it give me more joy? Does it give me more suffering? And also asking, like, am I following a pendulum, and why? Why or why not? Okay. We can start to let our nervous system guide us in such a way that, for me, feels more meaningful. And again, this is take what you like, leave the rest. It's not for everybody, right? But in the smallest to the biggest. So I might say, do I wanna start a Substack? Okay. And I ask my body, like, does that feel like more joy? Does that feel like more suffering? And the nervous system will tell you, right? The nervous system will go, if it's like not feeling great. Like if I ask my body, like, would you like to go back to work in a public school? I get like an immediate hell no, right? Suffering, right? And if I ask myself, do you want to do more painting? I get like a little bubbly feeling right here and up into my throat, and like a little kid jumping up going, yes, yes, yes. And that's because I'm in temporary housing right now while I'm building my house, and my painting stuff is all packed up because I was like, I'm not going to unpack it for a few months, but I think I probably will because of what I just experienced, because I hadn't asked myself that question in a little while. Um, so you can ask your nervous system. And I love how I'm going to go back and write down the quote, but Martha Beck mentions in the episode that the brain processes like, I don't know, 5,000 bits of information or something per second, but the nervous system does like 11 million, right? So your nervous system knows way more than your mind. And it is so worth checking in with it. And it can really guide you to some cool things. There's like 10 other things that I was going to mention, but you can just listen to the podcast. It's a really great one. I love you all so much. And yeah, keep asking yourself, like, joy, suffering, like, why am I doing this? Why not? What pendulum or what rule am I following? And do I want to follow that rule? Right? Um, because all of them are just made up. Okay. I love you so much. Talk to you soon.